Hey there. So this is going to be a little different, obviously. Most of you, the handful of you who follow the show, will notice that I've been gone for a couple of months. I took a little time to try to get my head together, and then I lost my mom about a month and a half ago, and there was a lot of extenuating circumstances around that gave me a lot to think about and a lot to try to process. So it's time for me to get back in the fight. So I wanted to address something. The few comments that I've gotten on the videos seem pretty confident that I am a Democrat. I am not. I am a leftist. The Democrats are closer to the left than the Republicans, and so I have worked with them rather than the staunchly right conservative party. Now, that doesn't mean that I was not at one point a Democrat in my journey. I have been. Up until probably close to a year ago, a little less, I was. I considered myself a Democrat. I was part of a local Democratic organization, but I did some work on their behalf. And it's actually both the absolute fecklessness of the Democrats at the national level to deal with the fascist rise of the Trump administration, and a specific experience that I had with that local Democratic organization that showed me clearly that the Democrats, while a tool to help combat the attack on what America really is supposed to be, and on the people here that are most vulnerable, that they are not the solution, and they are absolutely not a representation of the left. Whenever I spoke with and had my co-host Jenna with me, we've talked a little bit about how neither one of us seems to really connect as well with the Democrats as we once did. And I think she's on that same journey that I'm on, that they are just not strong enough for the moment. But I would like to talk about that today. I feel like with some recent things that have happened that I need to talk about it on this show. So first, let's just acknowledge, caveat right from the beginning, the Republicans are fucking assholes. Every single one of them in the Republican Party, whether they're just a standard conservative who just supports and kind of sits by and lets the authoritarian regime that's happening now come to rise, or whether they're the extremist maggot assholes who are actively supporting and actively working towards that goal, they're a lost cause. If you support what the Republicans are doing right now, what the Trump administration is doing right now, when it comes to vilifying and kidnapping immigrants or anybody who looks like an immigrant, I got no words for you. There's nothing we can do with you. You need to just sit back and shut up and let the rest of us who actually know what the fuck we're doing save this country. That being said, that we have an active party that's trying to corrupt this country into a modern day Nazi regime, there's another party out there who is supposed to be a bulwark against what's happening. They're supposed to be the party of the people, the worker, the everyman, and they have failed miserably at that. The Democratic Party, the national party, is completely owned by two different factions, two different entities. Corporations. They gather money from their corporate donors and then pay it out to their consultant class to try to figure out the best way to do just enough to get into office and not enough to give any hamper, any issue to the bottom line of the corporations that support them. They are paid to walk that tightrope. So it's no wonder that they don't appeal to the working people, and it's no wonder that they continue to fail and look like the, Keystone Cops that they are. Showing my age there with the Keystone Cops reference. Kids, look it up. And the second entity is Israel. They are owned by Israel, maybe even more completely than they are owned by corporations. AIPAC and the other Israel-aligned lobby groups have infiltrated the Democratic Party so thoroughly that they can't even, with the images that are coming out of Gaza right now, with all the history around that conflict, they can't condemn it. They can talk about now, finally, starvation in Gaza, but they can't even mention why that starvation is happening. They cannot find the strength, the moral character to assign blame to the party, the entity that is responsible. And so, like many who were aligned with the Democratic Party or even considered themselves one of them, I've come to understand that they are owned. Now the story. People who know me know that I was once part of the aforementioned Democratic organization. Again, I'm not going to say who that was. If you know me, you know who they were. You know who they are. But I was a part of that organization for a while. And my responsibility, my duty, and my pleasure, actually, to do for them was to create a weekly newsletter. When I got to them, they were very disorganized. I live in St. Charles County in Missouri. Anybody who knows that knows that this is a very red county, partly because a lot of the populace skews conservative, but also because the people here who do have more reasonable attitudes and are more center or left feel like they're alone. They feel like they're on an island. And the Democratic Party, before I joined it, was not very good at organizing those people, not very good at giving them a voice. They've improved over the last few years, still not anywhere close to enough, but that's an aside almost at this point. Before I got there, they had an email that they would send out every so often with, maybe an event, a fundraiser, something like that. But it was sporadic, it was inconsistent, and when I joined them, I decided that needed to be addressed. There needed to be consistent messaging going out to the people in the county that were Democrats. They needed to know we were here. They needed a consistent message. They needed to know what was going on. They needed to be informed. And I found I took it upon myself to do that. When I did the newsletter for about a year, I was extremely consistent. I took pride in being consistent with getting that newsletter out every single week. And I did not pull punches. I talked very plainly about the damage that our majority Republican state house was doing to the citizens of Missouri. I talked about the national issues with the Republican Party, called that out. And this was during the Biden administration. Definitely news skewed towards Democratic priorities, and for me, further pulled towards what I felt were progressive or left priorities. And I got a lot of great feedback on that. I had the full support of the chair and vice chair and all that. I did a lot to try to pull information together whenever it wasn't very easy sometimes. was very much pulling teeth to get people to tell me when events were happening, or if they knew of something that was happening statewide that needed to be addressed, needed to be called to people's attention. I'm actually really proud of one particular instance where there was a local library that a turfed parents group was trying to attack a member of the staff because they didn't present as traditionally masculine as they would liked for him to have presented, and they were trying to get him either sanctioned or fired. And I was able to get the word out with the newsletter within an hour of learning about this, and turned up hundreds of people to fight against this. And yeah, they squashed it. It ended up going nowhere, directly because we stepped in and mobilized people in support of this guy. So, did some good work there. I felt like I always did some good work. Then we had a one newsletter that I put out. It caused a bit of a stir. I don't know how many of you might be familiar with Jamal Bowman in New York, who lost his seat. Jamal Bowman was a member of the squad, a number of progressive House members, who include AOC, Ilhan Omar, him, Cori Bush, several others. And Jamal Bowman was outspoken about the genocide that's happening in Gaza, and the Israeli lobby funded a candidate who was willing to completely capitulate to them, who was essentially their representative in that race. A fellow named Latimer. I think his name is Thomas Latimer. And they poured a ton of money, unprecedented up to that point amount of money, into that race. And Bowman lost. They bought that seat. That's what they did. We had an upcoming election only a few weeks later here in Missouri, where Cori Bush, who was a rep in St. Louis and also a squad member and also a progressive and a strong critic of Israel's genocide in Gaza, they decided that she had to go too. So they found a stooge, a guy named Wesley Bell, who I actually met once at one of the Democratic events. I didn't get any sort of impression about him one way or the other, but I never would have thought he would have been the kind of guy to cave to a country committing war crimes. But he took it. He took it, and he ran with it. And so I wrote an article in the newsletter talking about how Bowman had lost his seat because of the interference of a foreign country and because of his outspoken criticism, and how we were in danger of having the same thing happen here in Missouri. It was a cautionary article, few paragraphs. I'll put it right up here. Anybody who wants to pause and read can do that. But a couple hours after I sent out that newsletter, and this was sandwiched between other articles, but I got attention. People started blowing up our group chat, and specifically one member of the group who had connections in the St. Louis area started accusing me of being anti-Semitic. He specifically said that it was some of his constituents who were complaining about the anti-Semitic overtones of my article. Read it. Tell me if anything in that seems anti-Semitic, and tell me if it feels like I lied about anything. Anything. Well, that caused a lot of issues, and there was a lot of back and forth. A lot of it was outside of the group chat. Clearly, people had conversations on the back end, and people who originally supported me putting that article out then changed their minds. after having some private conversations and thought that it was somehow an issue. The person who originally put the comment in our group chat about it being anti Semitic went back later and edited his comment so that he removed the reference to anti Semitism and accused me of taking sides in a primary, which is not what I did at all. I did what I felt like was right, and I informed our readers of a foreign country interfering in our election and how they needed to be aware so that they could make the right choice, whatever choice they felt like they needed to make. But they needed to have all the information. It was my duty as someone who was reporting news to our constituents. And that went back and forth half the day. I defended myself. I posted a link to the website called Track AIPAC, which talks about how much money certain candidates get from AIPAC. And at the time, it was much lower than what it is now by the end of the race. But I'll post that up here too. Take a look at how much money Wesley Bell has gotten from the AIPAC lobby. And whenever I wrote this article, that was like a quarter of that. But still, a lot of money. You can tell that for sure. Bell's a sellout. It was clear at that time. It's clear now. And Bell, if you can hear me, if you ever see this is what you sold your soul to support. You are an absolute scumbag. And there is a level of hell waiting for you. Later in the day, I got a call from the guy who was in charge, who's a nice guy. I get along with him well. To this day, pretty much, I get along with him well. Although some recent things that he and I discussed, I'm not sure that he and I are still friends. We'll see how that all turns out. But he said that he agreed with me that he was disappointed by Bowman's loss. He said, probably more than I was, though it would have been hard to be more disappointed with Bowman's loss than I was at that point. And that he thought that what I said was true, but because it was causing such a stink, that I needed to write the follow-up stating that that was just my opinion, that it was not the position of the organization. I told him I would, and that afterwards he could accept my resignation from the organization, because if he was going to cover for the genocide, if he was going to cover for the people who were trying to buy our elections in order to continue to murder babies overseas, then I didn't want to be a part of that organization anymore. And so that's what happened. I wrote my "It's Just My Opinion" letter. It never got published. Probably because it still called out the fact that I wasn't lying about anything, but just that the organization didn't support what I had written, which is an indictment of the organization itself, if you ask me. But in any case, never went out. The organization wrote their own, which was an incredibly just castrated, neutralized position on what was going on. And I left. When I started Left Hook, several months later, I started it specifically as an independent channel, something that was not connected to the Democratic Party, but would help perhaps promote some of their events, some of their ideas, some of their candidates, if I felt like they had the right progressive ideas. And that's how I ran the channel. I hope that's how it came across. I hope I never came across as just some Democratic shill, as the commenters that I had that were from the right accused me of being. And the reason why this came to mind recently is that that organization recently had Cori Bush as a keynote speaker at their biggest fundraising event of the year. Yeah. Now, I'm sure Ms. Bush had no idea what happened, but she came and spoke just a few days ago at an event they had and helped them sell tickets to this event, helped them raise money. And the people that I know who know what happened raised an eyebrow at that. So did I. I'm not sure if there is a greater example of hypocrisy than censoring something that would support a candidate who's fighting against war crimes, and then after they've lost their election, asking them to come around, benefiting from their celebrity to earn money for your organization. So I'm not a Democrat. Because while they are definitely not the Republicans, they are not on the right side of history. They would rather pull us back to a status quo, a pre-Trump status quo, where workers were still underpaid, where we can give some lip service about maybe possibly reforming the medical system in this country, but we can't possibly support Medicare for all the stuff, all the leftist stuff. So, not a Democrat. I am a leftist without a shadow of a doubt. I believe in people. I believe in humanity. I believe in empathy. I'll make a video, a follow-up to this at some point soon, where I talk about what actual leftism means. It doesn't resemble much of the Democratic platform. No. They pay lip service to it, but they don't really believe in it. So many of the national Democrats, and as I have found, many of the local ones, don't believe in much of anything. So that's my story. Sorry it was so long. Thank you for sticking with me this long. I appreciate it. I am going to do my best to get the channel back going. It will not be the same as it was before. It was clear to me from the lack of interest in some of the videos that you guys wanted more, wanted something different, so I'm going to do something different. I'm going to change the direction. If you guys have any feedback on what you'd like to see from me, I'd love to hear it. Anybody who hears this, thank you so much. I care about you guys, and I'll do my best to do right by you from here on out. Be safe, guys. Take care.